All right, so I have a video that is extremely controversial on my Patreon where I encourage men to seek feedback from their ex-girlfriends. I think that there's valuable data there, and I wanted to set up this segment. Matt's going to argue against me. He's going to try and convince me why I'm wrong. But first, I wanted to show this clip, which I found on TikTok, of what can happen when you go back to see an ex. Let's watch that.
You can be get my own clothes.
No, you're not finna get shit. Like, on my soul, on my daughter, you're not finna get shit.
You can be drunk here all you want to.
Okay, I'm finna be real drunk here when my people beat your ass in a second.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that.
The police gonna beat your ass, or my people gonna beat your ass? Okay. Because I'll call the police here.
I know you'll call the police.
That's what you want me to do.
No, that's what you always wanted to do. That's why I don't need to be with you.
That's what you want me to do.
Okay. No, I don't want you to do that.
You told me to call my dad.
Yeah,
you told me to call all these people.
Yeah, go ahead. I said go ahead and get your money so I can go.
That's what you told me to do.
I said all you gotta do is get your money so I can go.
You told me to do.
Okay, whatever.
You want me to do what you told me to do?
All right, whatever.
A few moments later.
All I'm trying to do is go out the door. Y'all see this on camera? I'm trying to leave out the door, get away from the situation, and make things better for me. But I can't seem to go. So when the police get here, you will see, because I'm gonna have to remove her from me physically. I'm trying to be polite and just walk out and have a great day, but she won't get off me. Can you please get off me? I'm asking her twice.
I'm asking you to
Can
sit
you
down.
please get off of me?
Okay, I'm asking you to sit down.
Can you please get off of me?
Gary, please don't put your hands. I'm begging you, please sit down, Gary. Please don't leave me. Please.
You see this, right?
Gary,
You see this?
please,
I'm
stop.
trying to go.
Please.
I'm trying to go.
Look at me.
I don't want to be with you.
I will give you whatever.
I don't want nothing from you. I want to get away from you. I want my freedom from you.
That's not easy to watch.
No, and I've seen that live too. Not the same people, but similar circumstances, and it's really upsetting. Yeah, I don't feel good. I assume that he recorded that video for police evidence in case there's a domestic charge, and that's totally defensible. Putting it on the internet, risky and questionable, but just having the video at all, I think, is actually a very smart move. And men with cell phones, take note. Use them if you have any gut feeling that you might need them. It might be your only chance.
Absolutely. The camera does not lie. And as we're seeing in this like Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, which I'm barely following, but I know that the evidence is interspersed with actual text conversations and audio recordings. And it's just so infinitely valuable compared to all the hearsay, he said, she said stuff. Like, right, let's actually listen to it.
I do want to ask you about this guy and this woman. What advice do you have for him? We'll start with him. What should a man do in his situation with this kind of outburst?
Yeah, absolutely no contact. The woman is clearly not stable. I know the audio was a little bit difficult, but for people who didn't see it, at the beginning, she was threatening to call her friends, cousins, family, so that they could come over and, I think she said it a few times, beat his ass. She's threatening violence against him. Evidently, he's broken up with her and he went to get some of his things back. And this is what's provoked her. You deserve violence. Terrifying. Like, this is obviously an unhinged woman. And then as he tries to leave, and from my perspective, he's perfectly rational, perfectly calm. He's not escalating the situation. He just wants to get his things. She's completely fine, physically restricting him from being able to go. From my perspective, tempting a violent response. I don't mean hitting her, but tempting him having to use his superior physical strength in order to move her. That woman who changed from being like mean and like petty and like threatening violence in one moment to just suddenly sobbing and crying. Like, look, at some part of me has compassion for her. She's obviously not a functional person. She needs help. So I'm not hating on her, but you cannot have anything to do with a woman like this. If your partner acts in this way, threatening violence, changing moods just like that, you know, no, it's not safe. Absolutely not safe. You have to go what they call gray rock, which is to be like, as they call it gray rock because it's the most boring object in existence. It's just a gray rock. But the problem is that anything that you do is just going to add fuel to their crazy fire, because she's not in a place of self-reflection. Her sense of self is not even inside herself. It's inside him, which is why she feels entitled to berate, to beat, to manipulate and blackmail, whatever it might be. And so you've just got to cut off contact, be extremely boring, and hope that she forgets about you. So many people have had negative experiences with their ex-girlfriends after they've broken up. All of the civility, all of the kindness, all of the intimacy, that love just seems to turn to hate. So every time they see their ex, things get exponentially worse. And so they just cut off contact completely. And there's also a sense of trying to preserve some dignity and some self-esteem. One of my most controversial Patreon videos I've ever released was one in which I defended the rationale of going to speak to your ex, seeking some feedback from her, like, hey, how are you feeling? How do you feel about me? How do you feel about our relationship? Where do you think things went wrong? Because I think that that's extremely valuable data that you should have. So look, it's a nuanced topic, but Matt's going to attack me. He's going to argue against me. I've trusted him to come up with some good arguments why I'm mistaken on this. I think you should get data from your ex-girlfriend. Lots of people disagree, so let's go through it.
First argument, Alexander. Does this advice to contact your ex to seek feedback not break the no contact rule that so many men rely on for psychological safety after a breakup? Seems dangerous.
Yeah, it's dangerous. And so it's not like an all-encompassing rule that you absolutely must do this. If you have been codependent in a relationship, you shouldn't see the other person, at least not until you've broken that pattern inside yourself, because the vortex is too strong. It's going to suck you into its orbit. It's kind of like an alcoholic. You can't really have like another drink, otherwise it's going to send you on that spiral. Because what has essentially happened in a codependent relationship dynamic is you've become addicted to that person, and certain things that they do, even their appearance, it can fire off all of those neurons inside your brain, and then you start acting in a way that's not rational, that's not in your best interests, that's actually just going to make things way harder for you. And so if you need to not see that person for a sense of psychological safety, or even if the person's been abusive and it's just not safe because they could do awful things to you, yeah, no contact, 100% agree with that. I don't think the fact that some men need to go to that extreme because their relationship was so dysfunctional necessarily undermines the arguments that I make about the value of seeking data from an ex about your relationship, about why it broke up. So I still think that my advice is good. It's just not applicable in 100% of cases.
Sure thing. As the old saying goes, if you want to catch a fish, don't ask the fish how to do it, you ask the fisherman. In the spirit of that, what makes you think that women have any insight into why they ended the relationship?
Okay, well, sometimes they do, but in which case it's obvious, like if you're hopefully a high quality guy, you've been dating a woman of moderate to high quality, then she should be smart enough to have some insight. But let's just assume for a moment that she's completely deluded and she has no insight whatsoever. I've actually encountered this argument a number of times from people being like, there's no point talking to women about anything. They have nothing of value. They lack self-awareness. And so this is a continuation of that. And my response to that is that data, you're taking the concept of data far too literally, as though the only value you can get from listening to a woman and the words that she's speaking is if she's an oracle of truth, giving you 100% facts. But that's absolutely not the case. So let's take a hypothetical situation. Let's say you go and speak to your girlfriend. You're like, hey, what's your feelings about our relationship? Why do you think it ended? Why do you think it didn't work out? And she's just a crazy, toxic, abusive woman. She's like, it didn't work out because you didn't prioritize me, and you're horrible, and you're a toxic, masculine patriarch, and just nonsense is flying out of her mouth. And so some people might say, look, Alexander, that's proof that that data was essentially worthless. She has no clue why the relationship actually ended because she has no self-awareness. I would counter that with like, absolutely not. That data was invaluable, because so many guys, especially if they've been abused by a toxic woman in a relationship, it's very difficult, even if they have enough self-confidence to end the relationship and to remove themselves from that toxicity. But the matter of actually removing any sense of guilt, any of that internalized voice that the woman has put inside your mind, that abusive voice which tells you that you're to blame for that, that's very difficult to get rid of. And when you're in the middle of a relationship and she's constantly pressing those neurological triggers, making you feel guilty, making you feel ashamed, it's very difficult to actually see what's reality and what's just the web of confusion and illusion that she's spun around you. Now, you break up with her, you take 3 months off, you're spending time with healthy people, you've got a better sense of like, no, this is what's reasonable. This is what reality is. These are my standards for how I deserve to be treated inside my interpersonal relationships. You go back and you speak to that abusive woman and she starts off with all of this nonsense. Yes, you're not learning anything significant about like why the relationship ended, but you're getting absolute clarity with that data about how toxic she is. And so any of that lingering doubt inside your mind, that's all going to get removed. Like, I feel so vindicated. I suspected that this girl was crazy. And now with the benefit of distance and coming back to her, approaching her in good faith, wanting to have a reasonable discussion, and she's all crazy and abusive. Thank you. I needed to see this. Now I can comfortably put that to rest. And that data continues to yield dividends into the future, because suddenly, not only were you right about the relationship and you can feel good about that, but you have a bunch of self-work to do, because you have to ask yourself, why was I attracted to a woman that crazy? And why did I let it go on that long? I have to really figure this out, because, and here's the danger, if you don't get any insight as to why you're in that relationship to begin with, why you found someone like that tolerable, you're going to repeat the pattern. And that's why I give this advice to go and seek feedback from your ex, because I've dealt with so many guys in Patreon direct messages and over Hey Hero and back when I did live consultations who are like, yeah, I'm dating the same kind of women, like she reminds me of my ex, and who reminded me of my previous ex, who reminded me of the girl I dated in high school, and they keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again. And possibly I'm a little bit triggered by this because I see it so often, but it's worrying to me that some guys won't ever reach out to their ex-girlfriends because of their pride or their ego or something like that. And yet they'll happily recreate that exact toxic relationship with a new girl because they didn't bother to learn their lessons. They didn't actually milk that old relationship for all that it was worth in terms of data. You've got to squeeze it. You've got to be absolutely relentless. That's my perspective.
Damn, bro. Well done.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Matt. I just
please.
get really passionate because I do feel like a lot of men have a kind of fragility around this stuff with a sense of pride. Like, no, she broke my heart and the relationship ended badly. And so I'm not going to give her the satisfaction of her seeing me coming asking for favors or trying to get insight. Like, no, I want her to think that she missed out on me. But they're still so... Their self-esteem is still so dependent then on what their ex-girlfriend thinks about them. And that to me seems weaker. And to me, it's actually the bigger man to say, she can think that about me, but I don't think that about me. And so I'm not particularly fussed. What's more important to me than appearing like the bigger one in the relationship, the one who got the better deal and who walked out on the other person, what's more important is that you actually have the information that you need from that relationship. You've learned those lessons so that you're not wasting your time. You've got this one precious life. If you spent 2 or 3 years in a relationship and then it broke down and you don't really know why, my God, you've wasted 2 or 3 years. But if that same relationship breaks down and you have exact data as to why it went wrong, what you need to work on, what was wrong with her, why you were attracted to a woman who had all those problems with her, then you haven't wasted that time. That's so valuable. You're going to take that information into your next relationships and you're going to be so much more equipped to be able to handle it. And the lessons that you learn in the new relationships will be different to the ones that you learned in the past one.
Isn't a man better off just going straight to channels like yours for insight rather than continuing to rely on women's opinions as the default truth? Isn't that the very nature of being red-pilled? A man ceases defaulting to a woman's worldview and instead enters into his own worldview.
I mean, that's a false dichotomy, the idea that you can only be listening to men's opinions or women's opinions. And for people who would make that argument, like, I'm flattered that you think that I'm potentially that smart or insightful that you can do away with listening to women at all and just listen to me. But I'll spoiler alert, where do you think I got all of my information from? I speak to women constantly, and you guys saw a bunch of it. Like when I went out onto the streets for the beginning of my channel, I was just asking women what they thought about stuff. But really, that was just to demonstrate what I was already doing in my private life. I talk to women about their psychology, about attraction, about relationships all of the time. And so I'm just repeating back to you what women have said to me. Now, obviously, I have to filter through a bunch of like the virtue signaling or the negative advice, the lack of self-awareness that women happen to have. I try and speak mostly to high quality women who do have like some sense of their own femininity and are not ashamed about it, because I feel like I'm getting much more accurate sense of the truth. But just because you've got somebody like me who's got that capacity to have all of those conversations, to find it interesting, and then to filter it down into a more masculine perspective so that you can understand it and apply it in your own life, just understand that that's general female psychology that you're getting from me. This woman that you had a relationship with, she knows you, right? She knows you intimately. And so even if you watched all of the videos in my entire channel and all of the videos on my Patreon, you had all of that information, I'm not necessarily convinced that that would automatically be more valuable to you than one good 3-hour conversation with a girlfriend who is actually giving you really good data about you specifically as an individual. Because I'm casting a wide net here. I'm talking about general principles of masculinity and femininity, but who you are as an individual, you are unique. And so when you want to fix things about yourself, or you want to grow, or you want to gain more insight, you need to be localizing it. You need to be speaking to people who are responding not just to you as a generic man, but you as an individual.
What if a man wants to get back together with this woman? What if they broke up and he feels like they should be better off together? Isn't seeking her advice a form of demoting himself, losing masculine frame? If he wants to get back together, shouldn't he take a totally different approach and not supplicate himself in that way?
Yes, absolutely. It's incredibly weak and feminine for you to be seeking advice as a sort of sneaky, underhanded way of trying to get your girlfriend back. And on top of that, you shouldn't be trying to get back together with your ex. You know, you guys broke up for a reason. Maybe if she's hounding you and she's changed whatever problems she had in the relationship, you might consider it. But yeah, if you're not over your ex, I'm so glad you brought this up. Do not try and contact her. You know, you might convince yourself, you might lie to yourself, say, no, I'm just, checking in with her. I'm just there to gather data, whatever rationalization. Man, if you're heavily infatuated with a woman, you've got that attraction addiction, then your mind will be an expert at twisting and hiding and obfuscating your real motives for trying to interact with her. And you cannot trust it. Do not reach out to her until you're well and truly over her and you don't have that temptation.